Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Scandal of the day. Joe Biden had a taco. Scandal of the day. Not from one of those taco trucks that were supposed to be lining every street the former guy claimed was going to happen. No. Actually went to a taco place. First time today, first time as president. Joe Biden stepped foot inside of a restaurant. Celebrate Cinco de Mayo. Went for a taco enchilada run to tout the almost $29 billion restaurant program to help get restaurants back up and on their feet. Open up the doors a little bit as we're moving towards the reopening, as swing the doors back open. This program to help restaurants, delis, diners, the service into the food service industry, get them back up on their feet. I think it's something that we need to do, something that has to happen. But yeah, today he was at a restaurant I can't pronounce, eating tacos that I'm really not a huge fan of. But good for him. It was the day he went there touting that program. Now, what I find interesting, and this is one of those things where, Joe Biden has the right to go out there and say, hey, look what we did. Look at how we're helping you. Look at how the bill that we passed is going to help get people back employed, help people get back to some bit of normal life, help business owners, especially small business owners, reclaim their businesses, all of that. Look what we're doing. Look at the work we're doing. What I find interesting is the number of Republicans who voted against it. I find it interesting that a bunch of them are touting it, saying, hey, make sure you sign up. There's a trough of money. Go get it. Something Republicans completely understand. They understand large troughs of money because if you remember, the first stimulus plan, massive trough for the corporate piggies to get their snouts in. And they did, very much so. But you had a bunch of Republicans, like the former vice president's brother, Greg Pence. He's out there saying, hey, yeah, go. And unabashedly saying that, this is, go get it. Help is on the way. Now, that's the opposite of what Kevin McCarthy said back in March on the floor when they were debating this, saying help is not on the way. So I don't know which Republican Party we're talking about. They all have the same R behind their name, but some of them are crazy or some of them are crazier. I mean, this is kind of weird. Now, Pence, anti-government guy, thrilled. We're going to give out some money. I'm going to help the restaurant industry. Help is on the way. You can go through a bunch of these. This Lee Stefanik, who evidently they're touting to push Liz Cheney out of the way for Beth DeVanduyn, Jamie Herrera Butler, Glenn Grothman, that guy from Wisconsin, a bunch of them all voted against it. And you go, how can you do that? How can you go, I'm against it, I'm going to vote against it. If it weren't for those Democrats over there, you wouldn't be getting this. But here, look what I'm bringing you. I mean, it's kind of irrational on a certain level. It's extremely ridiculous, but it is who the Republican Party who has always been. Hypocrites through and through. So I'm looking at this and I'm going, because I hear this all the time, Rick. We need to be more bipartisan. We need to compromise more. We need to come together more. And look, I pine for those days when that may have been possible. This, unfortunately, is not one of those days, evidently. Because look, you've got these people who were dead set against this. They were united against this legislation happening. They were in strong opposition. Almost universally, the Republican Party turned against it. Now, Tim Scott, he wants you to believe that, back when the former guy was there, we got along and we were able to vote on this. No, that's because Democrats were willing to go, yeah, we're going to give you the win. And they would have given Trump a third win. They would have given him whatever he wanted to deal with the pandemic, because it was about people. It was about our communities. It was about doing the job over doing the political. And this is where the Republicans have fallen down time and time again. Joe Biden is willing to compromise. He said it numerous times. He's been known as a guy who's willing to move around. But you now have, and look, I'm hoping this is the moment, because when I saw Mitch McConnell again, you may remember Moscow Mitch's statement that they were going to make Barack Obama a one-term president. That was his goal. They were going to gridlock everything up. They were going to obstruct everything possible, and they did. As much as they could, they filibustered every opportunity. They stopped any real possible legislation that was going to make people's lives better. They were going after it. Now Mitch has come out and said that 100% of his focus, 100% of my focus is on stopping this new administration. Mitch said, I think the best way to look at what this new administration is, he said, the president may have won the nomination, but Bernie Sanders won the argument. Now, you're supposed to think socialism. If you didn't get that, that's socialism he's talking about. Bernie Sanders, a socialist. Without identifying the fact that the programs that Joe Biden's moving forward on, popular. People want it. People want a $15 an hour minimum wage. People want massive infrastructure spending because they understand, one, we'll get better infrastructure. Two, we'll get lots of jobs. Seems pretty sane, seems pretty rational, seems like something we could do. Seems like something that could be bipartisan. And look, this is one of those things that I said back when Trump took office, the former guy. I said, had he gone to infrastructure first thing out of the bag, had that been the first club, not the we're going to rip healthcare away from poor people, had he gone to infrastructure, he would have had a much different presidency. Because that's the area where people go, or at least used to, go, yes, we can agree on roads and bridges and broadband and all of the things that need to be rebuilt. So I'm thinking about this statement by Mitch McConnell saying that, number one, 100% of his focus, stopping this administration, which means he wants nothing to get done. He's happy with the status quo. He's happy with the economy being still a little struggling, no investment to get that kick started. So if you're struggling, if you're having a hard time, you're on your own. And oh, by the way, the $28.6 billion in money that's going to go to help boost small business and the restaurant industry, if it were Mitch McConnell's choice, that would not happen because 100% focused on stopping this administration. Because, again, he wants you to believe that it's all socialism, it's all bad. Yet it's stuff that they had proposed in the past. So I'm looking at this, and good on Joe Biden for just dismissing it. He said that during the Obama years. We'll figure it out. We're going to get by it. But I'm hoping this is that moment. Because we've heard a lot of people say, well, we've got to do this in a bipartisan way. And it's interesting how when Democrats are in power, we talk a lot about bipartisanship. Oh, we need to appease the conservatives. We need to appease the Republicans. We need to make sure that they're taken care of. Make sure that they get input. They always do this. Always. It's like it's like they've got a secret thought. And I think about Dick Cheney, who was asked, if the Democrats would come along with whatever it was they were doing. And he said, look, they'll cave. It's what they do. That's their mindset. And they don't know how to act with the way Biden's going. He said, look, we can compromise. But ultimately, I think Biden knows he's going to have to push this as far as he can with the Democrats that he has. And I'm hoping this is that moment where those handful of Democrats who have been a pain in the neck to this point realize that nothing's going to get done with them wishing and hoping for bipartisanship. There is no measure of compromise that Mitch McConnell will make. There are no concessions that Mitch McConnell is willing to take. There's none of this. He has just told you he is 100% invested in making sure nothing happens. It seems like deja vu all over again. It seems just like deja vu. And because we've seen this movie, haven't we? And we remember all the ticking bombs, the debt ceilings, the sequester. You remember all those, Friday night at midnight, the world economy is going to go kaboom because America is going to default on its debt because we aren't going to pay the bills that we already made. They're arguing about just paying the bills. It's crazy. And it got me thinking, who are the Republicans today? Do Republicans see Mitch McConnell? Do they see these hypocrites saying, "Oh no, here's a ton of money. Here's a trough. Thank us for not getting this for you." That's basically what they're saying. You can thank us for not voting for something that you're going to benefit from. We didn't want you to have it. We didn't think you could use it, but hey, it looks good on a card. What does this Republican Party stand for? And the interesting thing is if you're looking at this Liz Cheney, Kevin McCarthy situation, where you're just kind of going, exactly what is it that they're doing? They're going to oust Liz Cheney, whom I don't like. The fact that I'm looking at this moment and there is a Cheney that I agree with, that a Cheney is the savior of our democracy, scares me. But here we're in this moment where Liz Cheney's saying, look, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to buy into the big lie. The election wasn't stolen. Donald Trump didn't win. He is not president. Joe Biden is the president. He is not illegitimate. He's the guy. And for that, for the fact that she won't lie, they're talking about ousting her and putting someone in who will. Now, look, I've always looked at the GOP as a bunch of liars, cheats, and thieves anyway. So is it surprising to me that now the liars, cheats, and thieves are actually outwardly saying, yes, we're liars, cheats, and thieves? No, it doesn't surprise me. This is what Donald Trump's main accomplishment was. He let the party be who they are. He let them be racist and misogynist and liars, cheats, and thieves. So now the party's going, hey, we can't let the cat out of the bag that much. So there's part of them going, no, we've got to have this veneer of decency. And the other part is like, no, screw it, we are who we are. And this is where the interesting part of all this is coming from, because Liz Cheney actually believes that they're the party of the rule of law. They're the party of the law. Yeah. They're the party of limited government, except when it means, going after people in their bedrooms and people they don't agree with. They're the party of strong defense. And I don't know anyone who isn't in favor of strong defense. And I've always pushed back on that because it's ridiculous. But anyway, also she said they believe in prosperity and opportunity. And I'm going, again, who doesn't? What she is calling for, though, and this is the important part. She's calling for a bipartisan commission of non-elected people who aren't going to be running for anything, to actually have subpoena power to investigate everything that happened on January 6th. Because at the end of the day, we cannot forget January 6th. We cannot forget the guy who was behind pushing this narrative, who whipped the crowd up and pointed them like a loaded gun in the direction of those legislators. And we've got to get to the bottom of all of this. And the fact that Liz Cheney's coming out and saying, look, we've got to have this bipartisan commission, much like they did with the 9/11 commission. You got to have people who aren't elected, who aren't grandstanding, who are going to do the work and dig. Because, and I agree with her, history is watching us. Our children are watching us. The rest of the world is watching us. Are we going to allow that kind of violence to happen? And this is an interesting moment for me because, look, I look at the Republican Party, which is why I'm not a member, as the party of the elites. I look at them as the party of the extremely wealthy, the business titans, the captains of industry, not the average everyday working stiff who they've bamboozled into thinking that they care about them. But this is a moment where, do they believe in democracy? Do they, the Constitution that they claim to carry around in their pocket? You remember during the Tea Party years, everyone had a pocket Constitution. None of them read it, but they carried it with them. They thought maybe the ink would bleed into them somehow, and they would be able to, by osmosis, be able to absorb what was in it. This is one of those moments. Who are the Republican Party members? Which side are they on? And I don't know which side wins. Is it the Liz Cheney, Mitt Romney side? Or is it the McCarthy and the Boeberts and the Gates and the other crazy one, Green? Is it that? Is that sideshow, that freak show, the future of the Republican Party? Part of me hopes so. Part of me hopes so that maybe we can get rid of them and they can start anew. And that those working people who have been bamboozled into believing that, yes, the boss really does care about them can begin to reevaluate. That the veneer of they care about us is wiped away. Perfect example. The party of the new working class, evidently, the Republicans, the Republican governor of Montana, Greg Gianforte, evidently is now going to say, he's now saying Montana is not taking any more unemployment benefits from the federal government, so no additional $300 for those working people who are out of work. You're going to go forced back to those crappy jobs. As I was saying, if you have a true labor shortage, if you're arguing we have a labor shortage, nobody will take these crummy jobs, you increase the pay. They don't seem to do that. They just want to force people back into crummy jobs and unsafe jobs. Going to be interesting to see how it plays out. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the new report out by the AFL-CIO, Death on the Job, how many people died in 2019, and, well, what we've done or what we're doing to protect workers. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1886. That was the day Wisconsin state militia shot down workers striking for the 8-hour day in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, killing 7. It's known as the Bayview Massacre. As cities across America erupted into strikes for the 8-hour day, municipal workers in Milwaukee had already won shorter working hours. Many private employers had followed suit. The Central Labor Union and the Knights of Labor mobilized thousands in the campaign to bring the rest of the city's employers into line. Building tradesmen joined Polish, German, and Native American laborers in strikes and marches across the city for nearly a week. They marched to area factories, calling out to workers to join the strike. By May 3rd, every factory in town was shut down except for the Milwaukee Iron Company rolling mill in Bayview. Workers marched to the mills and demanded workers join them. At this point, Governor Rusk called out the militia. They formed a line just inside the gate to prevent strikers from reaching mill workers. As the events of Haymarket unfolded in Chicago that evening, area businessmen became increasingly fearful of upheaval brewing in the city. Governor Rusk gave the shoot-to-kill order should any striker attempt to enter the mills. The next morning, as 1,500 strikers marched toward the mill, they were fired upon by militia. 7 were killed, many more injured. Strikes for the 8-hour day ended abruptly. Many union leaders were indicted, and Polish workers were practically blacklisted from working in the city for their radicalism. Though the massacres shattered hopes for the 8-hour day, Milwaukeeans responded by electing populists and socialists in local and regional elections for years to come. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So great story in Virginia today. Evidently, the folks with the Northern Virginia Labor Federation, the local arm of the AFL-CIO, decided they were going to take some cake. Who doesn't love cake? This, I guess, is the third cake that they've taken to Senator Mark Warner to get him to sign on to the PRO Act. I guess they've tried chocolate. I guess they've tried vanilla. I guess next might be an ice cream cake. They're throwing that idea around. Anything to get him to sign on and become a co-sponsor of the PRO Act. And as I said earlier today, this is one of those moments. So Democrats, if you're listening, this is one of those issues where there isn't a pass. This is, if you're a Democrat, you sign on to the PRO Act to protect workers' rights to organize and to protect themselves on the job and fight for better wages, hours, and conditions. There is no pass here. There is no, oh, well, maybe next time, because I don't think there is a next time. It's just that simple. So take the cake, Mark Warner. Enjoy the cake and sign on. Anyway, some good news. I guess not good news. A new report out by the AFL-CIO. Actually, some really bad news. They looked at the 2019 death rates at work and the number of people who lost their lives at work. They do this every year. It's their Death on the Job report. And here to share some thoughts on what they found, I've asked Mary Fletcher to come talk with us. She's a safety and health specialist there at the AFL-CIO. MK, thanks for taking time for us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I really get to appreciate sharing these unfortunate findings.
So cake, pro cake?
I don't think that we should send cake for what happened in 2020.
No, but Mark Warner better sign on, and the cake was just a sweetener. It's not a bribe, so stop that. Anyway, let's get to the report. I guess 2019, before the pandemic. I don't want to see what 2020 is going to look like, but before the pandemic, I guess the report found that 5,333 people lost their lives on the job. That means they woke up, they got dressed, they drove to the job, they were at work, and they didn't come home. That seems like a higher number than the year before. Am I right?
Yes, you're right. It is the higher number than the year before, and 2019 is the most recent data that we have. So it really shows where the state of things in the nation was before the pandemic happened, which we know has been the worst occupational safety and health crisis of our lifetimes.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to see 2020, to be honest with you. But I think when it comes, it's going to highlight what we've been talking about for the last year and a half, and that protections on the job are way too weak. And the former guy did a lot of things to break the system even worse than it was already broken.
Yeah, definitely. You know, this is the 30th year of our report. We really started this report 30 years ago because nobody was tracking what was going on, of what was killing people on the job, how people were getting injured. We weren't tracking the resources and what the agencies were doing around job safety to prevent all these terrible deaths from happening. And we weren't identifying the progress that we made and then the progress that needs to be made. So now we have 30 years worth of all of this information, and we've really gotten to see, you know, the progress that has been made in those 30 years because, you know, not as many workers are dying on the job, but the number that you said, the 5,333 workers who died in 2019, that number hasn't changed that much. It increased in 2019, but it's always hovered around 5,000 workers for a good number of years. And we really need to see more progress being made and not get complacent, just allowing that
No,
many workers to die.
I have listeners who say, well, it's only 5,333 people. It's not like it used to be back, 100 years ago where you had 100,000 people dying on the job. And you go, well, yeah, safety regulations, unions had a big part in stopping the number of people dying because we did fight for better conditions. But we also don't do the kind of jobs that we used to do back then in the same manners. I mean, we don't have 100,000 people working at one steel mill in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania anymore. So these are jobs that are around. Have we looked at what kind of jobs are the most dangerous? Who's going to work and not coming home, and maybe any ideas on how we stop those numbers from increasing?
Yeah, definitely. Every single year we look at the industries and occupations of people who are dying at work. It's usually occupations that you would think, agriculture, fishing, working, but we also look at the different demographics of workers. This year, one thing we really saw was a sharp increase in the Latino worker fatality rate. It really jumped this year. It was a 14% increase.
Wow.
And then also the number of Black workers who died on the job also took a sharp increase this year. It's the highest number in more than 2 decades, actually, of the number of Black workers who died on the job.
That's incredible. Now, from what I read in the report, something like 66% of the Latino workers were immigrants. How many of them were documented? How many were undocumented? And do we can we be certain that that's an accurate number, given the fact that there are a number of undocumented workers here, that because we don't know how many or where, that those things get brushed under the rug. Do you think that's an accurate number?
When you're talking about fatality numbers, there is unfortunately a body to be counted. So I feel like that's probably some closer to accurate. But when you're talking about workplace injuries, right, which can be very severe and very monumental in someone's life and really change the course of their life, we don't know the true toll of those, and we don't know what's happening. It's underreported, period, for all workers, and much less when you have additional things that would make a employer not report those injuries, make a worker not want to share those injuries either.
Right. Now, I look at this, and the reason I ask that is because the shocking thing in your report is you're saying every day, on average, 275 workers in this country die because of hazardous conditions. Now, 5333 is the number of people who go to work today and don't come home today. You're saying, this report's saying that 95,000 people die every year because of occupational diseases, exposure to asbestos, exposure, black lung disease, chemical exposures, things like that. What else are we talking about when you're throwing occupational diseases in there?
That is exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about a lot of chemicals that over time, being exposed to them, you end up with the really terrible diseases, the cancers, the chronic lung disorders, that really have such a long-lasting impact on your quality of life at your, the later years when you're supposed to be able to enjoy them. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, one thing when the agency first started that it did such a great job at is it put out standards for things like lead and asbestos and some of these very toxic chemicals. It doesn't mean they're still not an issue in the workplace. They definitely are. But that really made a big impact there. And then now you see there hasn't been as many of those standards for chemicals to come out. The last big health standards that came out under OSHA were under Obama. He just did 2 of them, silica and beryllium. And I think they're making a huge impact, particularly in the construction industry with silica. But we need more of that. And it took way too long. OSHA had to work on those standards for a really, really long time to get them out the door. So we need to have more of that.
No, it's interesting you bring those up because it was reported early in the former guy's administration that those were things that he was trying to scale back. Were they successful in scaling some of that, the beryllium and the silica and some of those standards? I thought they scaled some of that back because that was going to be my next question. How much of this could have been prevented because we had an administration, the last one, who was hell-bent on deregulating everything because, MK, those job-killing regulations, never mind the people-killing lack of regulation. But, am I wrong in this?
No, you are correct. The last administration did. They were very against regulations and really tried to do that. The union movement really fought against that administration doing anything against taking away worker protections, especially the safety and health protections they'd fought for so long. And unfortunately, the silica standard still stands in place as is and still there to be enforced strongly. The beryllium standard, there were some changes to it. They really tried to completely roll back a lot of it for construction and shipyard workers. And fortunately, a few things were changed, but the majority of the standard still holds.
Good. Now, the other part of this is, it's great to have standards. It's great to have regulations. If you don't have inspectors, and I understand under the last guy's watch, we are at what could be, the lowest point of OSHA inspectors in the 50-year history of OSHA. I guess at one point we were somewhere like 1,200 inspectors during the Reagan era. It was down to 774 during the last guy's term.
Exactly. We are at near the lowest. Last year, in 2019, was the lowest number of inspectors for the entire history of the agency. And for 2020, they did hire a few more people, but it was a very small number of people. And I think it was also because of a lot of pressure that they were getting.
You got a global pandemic going on.
There's a global pandemic, and you don't have people to enforce the rules, any type of rules. So it's so key. We really need that investment in the agency so that it can do its job.
Now, one of the things that's of interest to me is today, Marty Walsh, the Secretary of the Department of Labor, who I'm thrilled with, came out and said they're going to make it harder for employers to declare people independent contractors. How much of when you did this report, were you looking at people who are self-employed, these independent contractors, these gig workers? Do they get added into this, or is there no one tracking what happens to gig workers on the job? Because I gotta imagine the Uber and Lyft drivers and some of the package delivery guys who are on their own. I gotta imagine that bad things happen to them, but they're self-employed. They're not employees. They're not workers. Any thought?
Yeah, definitely. The rule made it easier. The rule that was rescinded made it easier for employers to misclassify them as independent contractors. And this is so important in the safety space of whether you're considered an employee or an independent contractor, because OSHA can only cover people who are employees. So if you're an independent contractor, you don't have OSHA coverage. So when your employer misclassifies you, they're basically passing the buck, saying they don't want to be in charge of their safety. They don't want to offer you the worker protections that you deserve. And we do track and have been tracking at least the number of self-employed workers and the rate of the fatality rate for self-employed workers. And it is significantly higher than those who are considered wage and salaried workers. This most recent data for 2019, self-employed workers were more than 4 times more likely to die on the job than somebody who is considered wage and hour.
Wow. No, I mean, I was expecting to, we don't really know, but you're actually tracking this.
Yes, the Bureau of Labor Statistics does offer that information. They don't have much detailed information on it for 2019, but at least we do know the top line that it is a significant problem.
because I'm of this mindset, and I know a lot of people who they've been bamboozled into believing they're their own boss. And I come out of the trucking industry, so for years, this is for decades now, thanks to Ronald Reagan. You've got everybody, any Tom, Dick, or Harry who owns a truck is now a trucking company. They're their own boss, yet they're told where to go, what time to be there, what to pick up, how to get there. They're told what half the time what uniforms to wear, what can be what can be written on the truck, what can be written on but they're their own boss. They don't have a boss. All what they do is they have all the responsibility, all the risk, and they're the ones who are getting the short end of this stick, but they're their own boss. And, I look at this and I'm going, most of the people I know who are in this position don't want to be. They just need a job. They need to make income. And you have an entire industry outside of the unionized industry that's pushing this. So for me, seeing this administration pushing back on this misclassification is really important.
I completely agree with you. It's recognizing that this is a problem, that having these fissured employment relationships are not good for society. And it's also not good for the safety and well-being of workers. And we cannot let employers skirt their responsibilities to keep the workplace safe.
I'm right there with you. Now, what are you hoping comes out of this report? I know you guys have been doing this for 30 years. And I hope folks will take a look at it at AFL-CIO.org. We'll get links out on how you can take a look at the report and see the numbers, these horrible numbers. What are you hoping comes out of this?
No, it's a lot of things. It's a very long, comprehensive report. But one thing, is OSHA and MSHA, they were created in the 70s. And this pandemic has really highlighted that they are so critical and important. And these agencies really need to be bolstered with the resources they need to hold employers accountable when they're not doing their jobs and keeping workplaces safe. And also, we know people need strong, comprehensive protections from COVID-19 right now. That still needs to be done. It's not over. Working age people have taken the brunt of it, and we're tired of that. With workplaces reopening, those who've been at work and those who are being asked to go back really need those protections in place.
Yeah, at the end of the day, MK, for me, it's union job equals safer life. You got a better chance of going home, and I think your report does lay that out. Non-union workplaces are less safe than union workplaces, and as you've pointed out, the gig jobs much less safe.
Definitely. And we need that accountability there, and we need the government to hold those employers accountable. Right
there. And it comes back down to policy. We need the PRO Act. We need to end this gig nonsense, and we need to go back to the bargaining table. But MK, I appreciate you taking some time. Thanks so much for sharing the report with us.
Thank you so much.
MK Fletcher, Safety and Health Specialist there at the AFL-CIO. Make sure you check out the report, the Death on the Job report. We'll get links out on social media how you can do that. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1931. That was the day that became known as the Battle of Harlan, or the Battle for Everts. Harlan County, Kentucky was coal country. Miners worked long hours underground and faced dangerous and often deadly working conditions. If they attempted to form a union, they risked not only losing their jobs, but also getting evicted from their company housing. Despite this response, starting in the 1920s, the United Mine Workers of America began to make headway in organizing miners. In Harlan, the miners who dared organize were fired. They and their families were thrown out of their homes. The company brought in hired guns to enforce the evictions and to keep the union out of the mines. Union miners and these gun thugs met on the road outside of the town of Everts. A gun battle broke out. 3 company men and 1 miner were killed. The governor of Kentucky once admitted, quote, there exists a virtual reign of terror in Harlan County, financed in general by a group of coal mine operators in collusion with certain public officials. The victims of this reign of terror are the coal miners and their families. The Harlan County mine wars raged on for the next decade. In all, 13 miners would give their lives trying to bring a union to the Kentucky coal fields. It was one of the bloodiest struggles of the U.S. labor movement. Bloody Harlan earned its nickname.
They say in Harlan County there are no neutrals there. You either be a union man or a the church clan. Which side are you
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some good news out of New York. Governor Andrew Cuomo signed the HEROES Act, I guess, just happened. Thanks to you, our listeners who chimed in. Thanks to all the working people of New York to push that through. It's going to be interesting to see how the rollout of this happens and if other states come along as well. But look, at the end of the day, for me, it's about how we make sure that that 5,333 people who died in 2019 on the job, that number goes down. And look, the gig thing is one of those. I remember when I first learned about the independent contractor. We didn't call them independent contractors when I was a kid. We were subcontractors. We had a different name. Same thing. You're on your own. You're your own boss. My story it's simple. I was 18 years old. I needed a job for the summer. A friend of a friend said, hey, this guy, he builds houses. They pay pretty well. You'll learn how to build a house. I'm like, hey, yeah, I love being outside. We did a lot of drinking. It was a good summer. And, near the end of it, I'm at work, and it's weird now that I look back at how stupid I was. But you're 18, you don't really know anything. Every Friday, the boss would come and he'd hand out envelopes with cash in it. And it never dawned on me. I filled out an application. I did the whole 9 yards. Never dawned on me that I wasn't an actual employee. Nobody ever said any of that stuff. There were no taxes taken out. There was none of that stuff. So, one day, I'm on my hands and knees and I'm hammering at something, and a guy with the nail gun shoots and misses the stud and puts it right into my foot, right in the bottom, right through my shoe. And, I'm hopping around, not happy. My shoe's full of blood, and I go, I got to go get this looked at the doctor, get a tetanus shot or something. And the foreman's like, well, that's on you. And I'm like, no, I'm going to the doctor. He goes, yeah, but you're going to have to pay for it. And I'm going, that doesn't sound right. That's when he explained, you don't actually work here. You just do work here. You don't actually work for the people building these, several $100,000 homes. You're on your own. And this is when I really started to become mentally a labor activist, because it shot me in the foot. And, I went to the doctor. I went to my family doctor, and, I got a tetanus shot and all that stuff. And that was the last day I worked building residential houses. The last day I did any construction work. I'm like, the heck with this. But it got me in this mindset that, there are protections to being an employee. Workers' comp being one of them. That if you're injured on the job, that you'll be taken care of. That your medical bills will be paid, and you don't have to figure out how to do it on your own. Because look, I look back and I go, boy, was I stupid. What would have happened? I'm up, 3 floors off the ground with no walls, no safety harnesses, nothing. Hammering over the edge, climbing up ladders with 80-pound things of shingles. What happened if I'd have fallen? What happened if something? And who knows what? You're you're SOL because you're your own boss. You take on all the risks. And it got me, this is why I've kind of become the labor activist that I've become. So when I learned about the Lochner era, this idea that, if you're desperate enough and hungry enough to work in poverty conditions for deplorable wages, that's your liberty. It's your freedom. It's what you can do. I'm not going to have some government get between you and a bad deal. Not going to have some government tell you that you can't enter into an agreement that's going to make you work 60, 70, 80 hours a week at below minimum wage. That's your right. And here's the thing. When I was 18, I didn't know what my rights were. And the reality is most workers don't. So when they take these jobs, oh, you're a gig worker now. You're your own boss. They still think there's some protections there. There's not. And we're going to relive a lot of those horrible Lochner era type things. For those who don't know, the Lochner era was 1905. New York passes the Bake Shop Act that says that bakers can't force their workers to work more than 60 hours a week. It's bad for people. It's certainly bad for the product because you got somebody who's never getting any rest or showering or any of that stuff. And in these really hot, horrible conditions, they tried to limit the number of hours that people could work. Not like we do. We'll just pay you overtime. No, just 60 hours. You can't work above that. So they fined Joseph Lochner twice for violating because he was like, the heck with you. I'm going to work my guys as long as they'll work. He ends up taking it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court rules liberty of contract. That if those workers want to work 100 hours a week, that's their liberty. It's their freedom. Not they didn't bother to take into consideration that these workers were desperate and the wages were so pathetically low that they had to work 100 hours to make ends meet. No, they didn't consider that. All they considered is that you have the freedom to make a bad deal. And there's part of me that goes, I understand that on a certain level. But when you have corporate power and you have an uneven situation like we have in the war between capital and labor, when the wealthy are saying, well, we just won't pay you and you'll starve, or your kids will starve, or you'll be homeless. It's kind of an uneven situation. And I look here in Pennsylvania where I live, and I say this all the time. Our workers' compensation law still refers to the employer and the employee as master and servant, but not in the liberty of contract realm, because you have the right to quit, which is why workers' compensation was brought into place, because all the workers were being blamed. What? You got hurt? That's your fault. You shouldn't have done that. Now, granted, someone dropped a pile of bricks on your head. You shouldn't have been there. It's your fault. So I look at this and I'm going, we're just circling back to the same bad ideas. So during the last guy's administration, when he made it easier for employers to label workers as independent contractors, allowing the pendulum to swing further to the side of employers, I was against it. And what you have people who go, oh, no, I've kind of figured out how to make a little bit of money doing this. I'm getting by. I'm just happy to have something. And what I'm saying is, you have a system right now where employers are doing what they're doing on the misclassification front because it benefits them. The only reason that we have this is it's cheaper for them. And it's a lot cheaper because they don't have to pay unemployment. They don't have to pay workers' comp. They don't have to pay state and local taxes. They don't have to pay any of this stuff. Unemployment, nothing. You're useful when you're useful, and then you're on your own. Now, there are some who say, well, I like being my own boss. And that's okay. You can do that. Nobody's saying you can't. It's just saying that the employers can't force people into that situation. And again, I go back to the trucking industry where I'm from. I think about these guys who were pushed into these lease agreements. There was a trucking company a number of years ago. I think MS Carriers. They had this lease program where you could lease the truck and it would be yours after a certain amount of time. But you basically worked for poverty wages during the lease agreement. And they would just, from what I remember of the guy who I basically just broke his heart by explaining to him that after 7 years, his truck was going to basically be close to worthless and need a lot of work done on it, because you're going to have over 1 million miles. You're going to have to redo just about everything. He thought he was going to be his own boss, working for half the wage and buying someone else's truck, home 5 days in a year without a penny in his pocket. But he was okay when he was thinking, I'm doing this for myself because I'm my own boss. Because he had been sold this idea. But what it really came down to is he just needed a job. He needed to be able to support his kids. He needed to be able to support his family. Understand, the business class isn't going to do something that's beneficial to the working people at all. Now, maybe you've found something, and I know a couple of Uber drivers I've met who they are able to make an existence out of it because it's a good tax cheat. They're able to write off the mileage. They're able to write off all of their expenses, and they're able to do a whole big write-off thing, something that corporate America has been getting away with for years. So the little guys figured this out. Hey, we can deduct a whole bunch of taxes, and we won't have any showable income. This is how corporate America is lining their pockets. And it's angering and frustrating. And I'll be honest, I'm happy to see the Biden administration moving in a direction that is more sane and more rational. Now, you see a lot of these on-demand things, the DoorDashes of the world. And I had someone send me this tweet about DoorDash, where this person, Scott Frazier, says, just stopped from ordering deliveries unless I understand and agree that DoorDash employees are not employees and acknowledge and agree that DoorDash is not a delivery system, is not a delivery service. So the person who's, understand this, now this is what this guy's saying, he stopped ordering because you have to click in boxes saying that you understand that the person bringing you your food is not an employee of DoorDash, and that DoorDash isn't responsible for the delivery. They're just the app. They're just the conduit. They're just the middleman who takes the money. They have no responsibility to anything or anyone. They're just taking your money. And I was looking at the line, the contract that says you understand and agree that DoorDash provides technology, a technology platform connecting you with an independent food service provider and others that provide the products offered through these services, and independent third-party contractors who provide delivery services, contractors. They go on to say, you acknowledge and agree that DoorDash does not itself prepare food or other delivery services and has no responsibility or liability for the acts or omissions of any merchant or any contractor. Merchants is the retailer. The service offered by DoorDash pursuant to this agreement do not include any retail services or any food preparation services. DoorDash is not in the delivery business, nor is it a common carrier. DoorDash provides a technology. So you have to agree that someone just shows up to your house. You don't know who they are. They're just providing you an app. I guess, what's that Fight Club thing? You don't talk about Fight Club. It doesn't exist. I guess this is where we're at. And it's this kind of stuff that's insane to me. The stuff that we're willing to give up just to make a living. And then the stories we tell ourselves. I think about some of the Uber drivers I've met who you ask them, why do you do this? Because you expect, hey, I need a job. You get every excuse under the sun. Well, I have extra time. Well, I got bored sitting at home. Well, I really like people. Never once has someone go to me, man, I'm desperate. I need the money. I'm broke. There are no jobs out there. And the jobs that are out there are crummy. And I guess that speaks a lot about us. I mean, I love the American optimism that even in crummy situations, we try to find the best. But this is one of those things that just, it comes back down to policy. And, I was reading an article by one of these right-wing groups. They were saying, Joe Biden is fighting the battles of the 1930s. Work has evolved. People want to be exploited and used. People want to have their entire life revolve around the work that they have to do just to be able to support their kids. I don't agree. I think most people want to have a decent job. They want to have decent health security, decent retirement security. I think most people just want to be able to work, spend time with their family, and lead a decent life. Now, there are some people who then want to go beyond. They want to run their own business and they want to do other things. But I think the mass of people, they're okay in a situation where you go, hey, you know what? I like the job I do. I'm good at the job I do. I take pride in the job I do. But I don't want to work 100 hours a week. I don't want to be responsible for all of this breaking down or that breaking down. But what we're doing, and this is part of the Trump tax code. For the first time, we encouraged, independent contractors, small businesses, people, doing their own thing over employment. And we changed the tax code in ways that allowed them to be able to take advantage of that. And I don't necessarily know that that's a good thing, because all of the institutions that we have, like Social Security and Medicare and unemployment and workers' comp and all those things, are dependent on people being actual employees and paying into it. And what happens when you have a number of people who end up being injured, who end up being harmed? They end up falling on the back of Social Security. Again, another cheat. So I'm against it. I'm glad to see Marty Walsh and the Biden administration moving in the right direction. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1852. It was the last day of a 3-day convention held in Cincinnati, Ohio. Printers who worked for newspapers and other publications from 14 cities had converged to decide if they wanted to form a union. The printers had first met on the question of starting a union 2 years before in New York City. Now they were ready, and with a vote, the National Typographical Union was born. The very first action of the new union was to denounce Sunday workdays. Only one person cast his vote against the motion. The printers would play a leadership role in the U.S. labor movement. Printers were located in major cities across the U.S. Even more importantly, the union's members often worked for newspapers and had a skill set that could help get the word out about union news and actions. 17 years later, the organization changed its name to the International Typographical Union in recognition of new Canadian locals that joined. That same year, the union decided to let women into its ranks. This made it one of the earliest unions to do so. In 1870, Augusta Lewis was elected as corresponding secretary. She became the first female officer of a nationwide union. The ITU was known to be a very democratic union with strong locals. As printing technology changed, the union faced many challenges. Computers dramatically transformed the work of printing. These technology changes reduced the numbers and strength of the union. In 1986, the ITU merged with the Communication Workers of America. One of the ITU's most famous members was author Mark Twain, who joined the Typographical Union as a young man and proudly held his union card for the rest of his life. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
It's tough being rich. For one thing, you have to be on constant alert to keep commoners from encroaching on your turf and upsetting your sense of proper social order. Consider the angst of the swells who summer in the Hamptons, an ultra-tony seaside enclave of New York City's old wealth families and Wall Street elites on the eastern tip of Long Island. For generations, they've used local ordinances to keep us riffraff out of their exclusive communities. But now, they find themselves besieged by, believe it or not, Indians. The small reservation of some 1,600 members of the Shinnecock Indian Nation has also been there for generations. In fact, it's the rich white residents who are the invaders, for their Anglo predecessors first descended on Shinnecock lands in 1640. Today, the indigenous people struggle with poverty, gazing across a small bay at the huge summer mansions of their Gatsby-esque invaders. But now, to lift their own economy, the tribe intends to build a modest tribal-run casino on their reservation. "Oh, the horror!" shriek the Hamptonites. Yet, the reservation is the Shinnecock people's sovereign land, free from the Hampton elite's zoning laws. So the rich and mighty are reduced to begging the native people to just go away. "A lot of us are bleeding heart liberals and sympathetic to the oppressed," exclaimed one, "but it's not the right location." It never is it? But casino revenue could help tribal families with such expenses as rent, food, utilities, and car payments. It could change the quality of life here overnight, says the tribal chief. But who cares? A few of the snobbiest of Hampton blue bloods haughtily warn they will move out if the Shinnecock Casino comes in. This is Jim Hightower saying, sounds like a good trade to me. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is brought to you by the Lowdown Happy Hour, live streamed from the Chat and Chew Cafe. Details at hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So on April 30th, a billionaire philanthropist, that's a nice name for him, Eli Broad died. He was 87 years old. And I got a couple of messages from people who were not all that kind. I'll leave it at that, because Eli Broad, one of the guys who, the Broad Foundation, one of the folks who basically wrote the playbook on how to destroy public education. One of the folks who actually had the playbook on how to close down public schools and, all of the horrible things that then come with it. And, it was, again, it fostered that conversation on, the people who have the money doing bad things for the rest of us. And you remember yesterday we were talking about the valorization of wealth, how this conservative author was saying, no, we care about wealth. We're okay with inequality. We're okay with the bad stuff because we want people to think this is the place where the streets are paved with gold, where somebody can go and make a gazillion dollars. And never mind if you have kids who are starving or veterans who are homeless. We can deal with that little inequality. just as long as we've got rich people with bad ideas. And here to share some thoughts on rich people with bad ideas, I've asked Thomas Ultican to come talk with us. He's a teacher, blogger. He's got a new piece out, Why Tax Billionaires Out of Existence. I'm not against this. Thomas, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah.
So we're going to be taxing billionaires out of existence. Is that the plan?
Well, you just brought up something that really is really bothering me. So Eli Broad died on April 30th, and he was a nightmare for public education. He spent a lot of nice stuff on arts in L.A., and so a lot of people in L.A. really liked what he did. But the big problem I have now is that large chunk of change, that $9 billion in his fund, is still there, and it's still running, and they're still running the Eli Broad privatized public education playbook. And there's funds like that developing all over the country. In Kansas City, you got the guy that started the Kansas City Royals. His fund is still there. He died in like 68 or 72, something like that. And that's just all over the place. These large funds of private money that really want to lower taxes on the wealthy and get rid of any paying social services. Any kind of social services are somehow bad. The users are taking the real people's money, and so that really bothered me. I really think we can't have a democracy if we don't tax these billionaires out of existence. We just can't have these huge piles of money all over this country and be a democratic country.
But Thomas, we're told that the great thing about this country is you can come here and you can seek your fortune. You can be wildly wealthy. You can be as immorally wealthy as you can possibly be. And we encourage that because, according to this author, that's one of our core values.
Well, that's his core value, but I think he's absolutely wrong. I don't think that's American. I think that's your basic oligarchy. It has nothing to do with American democracy. It doesn't. It's like Republicans now seem to be anti-democracy even. It's like, what's going on there? I can't believe the only Republican making any sense to me is Liz Cheney.
Exactly. I said at the beginning, I can't believe that I'm depending on a Cheney to save our democracy.
I mean, it's just crazy. And you know what? She's going to be a nightmare in the future because she's going to win.
Yeah, we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to her in Wyoming.
I think they took on the wrong person when they take on. She's going to win. She's smart. She's a conservative nightmare. She checks all the boxes off for them, and a lot of those conservatives have really gotten sick of Donald Trump.
We'll see. I mean, I have respect for honest conservatives. I have problems with the ones we have now. My concern with her is
respect for honest conservatives, but the big problem I have is them being anti-labor, which is basically being anti-common man.
Right. No, and then look, they're trying to spin themselves right now as the party of the working class, and I'm going, show me what you've done.
Well, you've given tax breaks to the super wealthy so that money can trickle down. And it still hasn't trickled to me, though. No,
I haven't gotten it yet either. I've gotten wet. I've had yellow stuff, leak down on me, but it hasn't been golden honey. But I do want to talk about your piece, though, because in your piece on the billionaires, you talk about some of the bad ideas that they've come up with. Things like Teach for America, which was touted by the left and the right as a great thing. We're getting young, energetic people to go into those poor neighborhoods and they're going to help.
Well, Mercedes Snyder had it just about right. I think it was 2010. The Walton family dumped $50 million into Teach for America. And basically what Mercedes Snyder says is that, what's her name, the founder of Teach for America, said, Wendy Kopp said, I have a bunch of young, idealistic, mostly Ivy League graduates for sale, and corporate America showed up to buy. And, it is just a complete baloney. They've got this idea that anybody graduates from college, you can send them to a 5-week training course and they can be a teacher. Well, Teach for America teachers are terrible. They're lost. They're walking into classrooms completely unprepared. Maybe 1 out of 10 or 12 of them just is a natural ability to lead a class, but that's very unusual. Everything I'm hearing, and you look at the data where there's this partnership for LA where Marshall Tuck was running it, and he brought in all kinds of Teach for America people into these partnership for LA schools. Well, guess what? Their test scores didn't go up, even though they were given lots of resources, because they had terrible teachers. They had teachers that were unprepared. There's very few places like that where we really get to see it, but it's just common sense. A real teacher has a college degree and a year of classes in education and a year of training underneath a master teacher before he goes into the classroom. Teach for America's kids, no college, no education classes, and no year of training, no experience other than a 5-week summer school course. They're just completely unprepared.
But, the argument is, well, they're going into schools that are failing and we're trying. We're trying, Thomas. We're trying the best we can. These schools are failing without us.
Well, the other thing is this failing notion is just so ridiculous. It's based on these completely useless standardized testing. There is a pile of articles out there right now written by educators all over the United States. I mean, it's just overwhelming about how useless standardized testing is and how destructive standards are. Nobody's listening to the educators. It's people like the late Eli Broad that they listen to, or Alice Walton, or Reed Hastings from Netflix. That's who gets listened to. That's
because they're rich. And again, I go back to where I started with this idea of the valorization of wealth, that they're somehow better, the wealthy are somehow smarter, that they know what to do. Because it's what we were told, weren't we? We give the rich people all the money; they know what to do with it, and they'll take care of the rest of us. We're doing the same thing with education. They figured out how to make a widget or whatever, so they must know something, so they can fix these problems with all of their bad ideas.
Well, and look, like one of the biggest nightmares for education is Lorini Jobs Powell, or Lorini Powell Jobs. Lorini Powell. She married Steve Jobs. That's what qualifies her to lead education now. So now she's got $30 billion. What smart things did she do besides marry sweet Steve Jobs?
That's a good question. You can say the same thing about Betsy DeVos. Why is she running education when she comes from being being an Amway saleswoman?
She wasn't even a salesman. She married a salesman.
That's true. But here again, it comes back to this frame that somehow the wealthy are smarter, better, that they'll take care of us. They know what we need, and they don't. Clearly, I mean, you go through bad idea after bad idea, and the reality is we know what we need. We need smaller class sizes. We need better trained teachers. We need to eradicate poverty. It would be great. Take some of that money from the billionaires, move it down to the bottom of the economic scale, bring those kids up and those families up, make sure they've got food and clothing and secure shelter and all of those things. And parents have jobs and health care. Make sure we do those things. That's how you get kids to learn better.
Yeah, this what's going on. The other thing that really bothers me, and you mentioned this just a little bit ago, is that people on the left were lining up behind Teach for America. Well, those weren't people on the left. Those were neoliberals. That was the Hillary Clinton, Bubba Clinton, that whole group, Gore. Those neoliberals, they are basically 50s Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, you even had Obama say he'd have been an Eisenhower Republican.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm really surprised at how liberal Biden has turned out to be, because so far it's looking like he's going to turn his back on public education, but at least he's trying to do something for children.
You not a fan of Cardonia?
Oh, well, no. I mean, this is a guy that trained in one of the billionaire organizations' so-called fellowships. And then he goes right from that fellowship to be head of education in Connecticut, and now he's Secretary of Education. But I'm not so much bothered by him as the people that they're putting in the lower levels. They keep bringing Obama people back and people that, were like authors of No Child Left Behind and people that were running Race to the Top. I mean, this is some real awful people have been put in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, Arnie Duncan's not back, is he?
No, but his friends are. Yeah. His lieutenants, several of them are back.
Well, that is not a good thing. So the question then becomes, you've got another piece out on why you support public education. Why should we support public education? Because we're told it's failing. All of the messaging that's going on. The billionaires want us to know our local public schools are not doing well. Why do we support it?
Well, and there's a real problem here because public education is the foundation of democracy in America, and it's also and it's where like school boards run the schools and local citizens have input into their schools. Well, they've federalized this in the last 20 years, and they've turned it into a real difficult situation for public schools. I just can't believe that what's going on. And it's like if we lose our public school system, we will lose our democracy.
Well, I would argue we're close to losing all of it anyway, and a lot of those people on January 6th were educated in public schools. That would be the argument back, wouldn't it?
No, the people on January 6th were propagandized by the reality TV star that used to be in the White House, and they actually believed that he was. I don't know where they were educated, but they have bought into this major lie that this guy won the presidency. They really feel like the guy they were supporting won the presidency, and it's their patriotic duty to right this wrong. And we've never had a president who didn't follow the American Constitution for a peaceful transfer of power before. And this guy's a nightmare.
Yeah, now it looks like he's going to run in 2024, so we may get him again.
Well, it's going to be the 2022 elections are going to be really interesting because I just can't believe this stuff is going to play. I just think more and more people, people in Eastern Oregon are waking up now going, oh, wow, we're being locked down again because we have the highest coronavirus rate on the West Coast. Because they voted 80% for Trump. Well, they got to start connecting the dots sooner or later.
That is the hope. If you want to check out the work by our good friend Thomas Ultican, we can get links out why he supports public education and why tax billionaires out of existence. I can think of a million reasons, but public education is right up there at the top. We'll make sure we get links out on how you can check out Thomas's work. As always, Thomas, I appreciate you taking some time for us, sharing your thoughts and your writings.
Thanks a lot, Rick. It's been a pleasure.
Good stuff. Appreciate your time. Let's take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1886. That was the day Wisconsin State Militia shot down workers striking for the 8-hour day in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, killing 7. It's known as the Bayview Massacre. As cities across America erupted into strikes for the 8-hour day, municipal workers in Milwaukee had already won shorter working hours. Many private employers had followed suit. The Central Labor Union and the Knights of Labor mobilized thousands in the campaign to bring the rest of the city's employers into line. Building tradesmen joined Polish, German, and Native American laborers in strikes and marches across the city for nearly a week. They marched to area factories, calling out to workers to join the strike. By May 3rd, every factory in town was shut down except for the Milwaukee Iron Company rolling mill in Bayview. Workers marched to the mills and demanded workers join them. At this point, Governor Rusk called out the militia. They formed a line just inside the gate to prevent strikers from reaching mill workers. As the events of Haymarket unfolded in Chicago that evening, area businessmen became increasingly fearful of upheaval brewing in the city. Governor Rusk gave the shoot-to-kill order should any striker attempt to enter the mills. The next morning, as 1,500 strikers marched toward the mill, they were fired upon by militia. 7 were killed, many more injured. Strikes for the 8-hour day ended abruptly. Many union leaders were indicted, and Polish workers were practically blacklisted from working in the city for their radicalism. Though the massacres shattered hopes for the 8-hour day, Milwaukeeans responded by electing populists and socialists in local and regional elections for years to come.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it looks like the former guy is looking at 2024, and I agree with Thomas. You look at 2022 is going to be an interesting year. And I've been saying, look, if Biden's able to get a big, chunky, healthy infrastructure bill through, if we're able to get some actual stuff done, that's going to be helpful. It's going to help the Democrats in 2022 because people's lives are going to get better, and that's what we need. We need to move policy. We need to move in the right direction. Need to do the right things. Make people's lives better. And then they won't pine for whatever bizarre rhetoric is coming out from the former guy. The other news today, evidently Facebook's oversight board, they have ruled that, I guess, an indefinite suspension of Trump's Facebook page is not permissible for Facebook. That somewhere down the road, maybe, possibly, he's going to get his account back. They wrote quote that it's not appropriate for Facebook to indefinitely suspend Trump because it's not permissible for Facebook to keep users off the platform for an undefined period, with no criteria for when or whether the account will be restored. They're re-examining the arbitrary penalty it imposed on Trump. They're going to look at it within 6 months. In the meantime, Trump has got a new blog. Evidently, it's he's discovered how to have a blog. It's going to be From the Desk of Donald J. Trump, of which I will not talk about outside of now. Don't care what the former guy has to say, because ultimately, for me, it comes down to he's responsible for January 6th. And this is the reason we absolutely need a bipartisan, a nonpartisan investigation to get to the bottom of who was responsible and hold accountable those responsible. But here's the thing. You're going to have crazy people saying crazy stuff. I was never thrilled with the idea of banning Trump from Twitter or social media. I understand it. It's a private platform. They're able to do what they want to do because it's theirs. It is not the public domain. So this idea that somehow it's free speech is ludicrous. Your free speech rights begin and end with what you say to your government. You do not have free speech rights with me or anybody else. You don't get to say whatever you want, especially if you come into my house. We will then have problems. I'm someone who believes in more speech, not less. If I don't like what you say, I will respond. And the mass of us should be educated, intelligent enough to know BS when we see it. Past generations figured it out. I think of my grandfather. My grandfather had an 8th grade education. He was smart enough to be he had an incredible BS detector. You couldn't get anything by him. He was a street smart guy. We got a lot of really educated people who believe a lot of dumb stuff. So just because you've got a degree hanging on the wall doesn't mean you're all that bright. Especially if you listen to some of the stuff coming from the Republicans today on they stole the election. 60 court decisions say you're wrong. And even today on Parler, because Parler was partially up for a touch. Partially, they had a couple hours where they were workable, but that didn't stop the Woods official. And I don't know who the Woods official is, and this is why I hate a lot of this social media stuff, because you get people who hide behind stupid names. But the Woods official, and he's verified, and I don't know how you verify something like this, but okay. He parlored out when the real conservatives take back the House and the Senate and the White House. Every single one of those individuals that have committed treason, Republican, Democrat, Independent, Supreme Court justices, will hang for their treasonous acts. Being nice is over. We are at war with the world and our own government. Clearly someone with a mental disorder. Now, do I think he should be allowed to say that? Yeah, I do. But I think the sane and rational among us should be dealing with this guy and watching him very closely, especially local law enforcement. Clearly somebody who's off the beaten path. Now, should he have the right to say that? I don't. Look, say dumb stuff. I know people who say dumb stuff all the time. Sometimes I say dumb stuff. We have a right to say dumb stuff, but we don't have a right to threaten people. And this is kind of on that line where you go, is this the right thing to say in a decent society? Now, look, I think he should have the right to say it. But I think we, as readers and consumers of this garbage, should turn them away. No one should be following it, retweeting it. It comes back to us. And look, if you're the federal government, I think you got to be worried about someone like this. Because somehow this guy believes that he's a real conservative, and I don't know what that is anymore. Is he on the side of Liz Cheney, who's saying, no, we shouldn't cover up what happened on January 6th? And no, I'm not going to lie about the nonsense going on? Or is he stop the steal because we know the former guy told us? It's insane. Also, a federal judge, he has ordered the release of a Justice Department memo. This Justice Department memo is supportive of the former Attorney General Billy Barr. The conclusion that Trump should not be prosecuted over the Mueller report, the obstruction of justice that went into that, and all of the things that they did to roadblock the Mueller report. This is kind of interesting to me, because Billy Barr gave them the ability to walk out of the White House without any consequences for their actions. Someone who was impeached twice. And still the Republicans let him walk. I want to know why. I want them to go back and look at that Mueller report again. I want somebody to hold that administration accountable. Now, I'm not one of these people go, oh, no, we're going to go, this is going to start the ball of, we're going to go back to, every administration's going to go back after the last one. No, the last one was really unique. And in the coming decades, we're going to find the level of criminal activity just through the roof. Now, again, these are the people that Liz Cheney said believe in the rule of law, who have been standing around making sure that, well, the criminal that was there before gets to walk away. And, worse yet, might run in 2024 and might win. Let that sink in. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend Bob Ney is going to be here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day. Right back after this.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
There is simply no reason why the blades for wind turbines can't be built in Pittsburgh instead of Beijing.
Biden makes history with climate-focused congressional address.
Drilling also releases another potent greenhouse gas, methane.
New report finds reduction of methane crucial for climate. Plus, Washington State passes landmark cap-and-trade law.
All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
He wants control of your life. He's going to control how much meat you can eat. Can you imagine that?
No, I can't imagine that because it's not true, because you're making it up, Kevin McCarthy, and you know you're making it up because it's been debunked days ago, yet you keep saying it. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, you have been delighted for days about this since Biden's address. It was historic, particularly from a climate perspective.
Indeed it was. President Joe Biden's address to a joint session of Congress on his 99th day in office late last week was historic. For the first time, man-made climate change was woven throughout a State of the Union or equivalent speech as a core part of economic policy, foreign policy, and job creation.
Biden lover.
Biden's climate policies depend heavily on Congress passing his $2 trillion American Jobs Plan proposal to rebuild the nation's crumbling infrastructure and shift to clean energy. He characterized it as crucial to stay competitive with China, which is investing twice as much as the U.S. in clean technology. And he pitched it to union members, a key voting bloc, name-checking the IBEW union, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers.
American Jobs Plan will put engineers and construction workers to work building more energy-efficient buildings and homes. Electrical workers, IBEW members installing 500,000 charging stations along our highways so we can own the electric car market.
Biden's joint address to Congress could mark a turning point for the U.S. and the world if his climate policies are translated into broad action.
Oh, that's a big if.
Indeed it is. On Monday, Republican Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell surprised no one in announcing that no Republicans will vote for Biden's jobs plan, no matter what is in it, making West Virginia's conservative Democratic Senator Joe Manchin an incredibly powerful figure determining the course of future U.S. climate action.
Long may he reign.
Meanwhile, the Transportation Department is moving forward, announcing the administration will jumpstart construction of new interstate electric transmission lines to distribute clean energy across the country, avoiding delays and disputes by siting lines along existing federal rights-of-ways and highways.
Do you need special electric lines to transmit clean energy versus regular old dirty energy?
Yes, you do, because high voltage transmission lines are way better at carrying energy over really, really long distances.
Huh. Who knew?
A new report by the American Council on Renewable Energy has identified 22 shovel-ready grid transmission projects across the country that they say would increase wind and solar generation by 50% in the U.S. and create 1.2 million jobs. In other news, Senate Democrats late last week voted to reinstate Obama-era regulations limiting methane emissions from the oil and gas industry using the Congressional Review Act, which allows Congress a short window to rescind regulations passed by a previous administration.
Well, that's about time, Democrats.
Yes, and it matters because methane, the principal component in natural gas, is a more potent climate-warming gas than carbon dioxide on shorter timescales, and the oil and gas industry is a primary source. The New York Times reports that a new draft study by the United Nations warns that slashing methane emissions is far more important to slowing man-made global warming than previously thought, and plugging fossil fuel industry leaks has the biggest potential to slow emissions both efficiently and cheaply.
And that is a huge part of the Biden American Jobs Plan.
Exactly. Moving swiftly to cut human-caused methane emissions from the most polluting industries, fossil fuels, landfills, and agriculture, could slow the rate of global warming almost immediately by as much as 30%, buying us some time. And overall, would avoid about a third of a degree Celsius of global warming by the 2040s.
It is maddening that these old drilling platforms are leaking methane. They're not even giving us oil or gas. They're just making the climate worse.
And on public lands, they're actually wasting the public's natural gas when they flare it into the atmosphere.
Ah, there's that too.
And finally, Washington State's Democratic majority state legislature finally passed a bill to establish a cap and trade system to cut the state's carbon emissions. It'll be the second state after California to do so. The system requires polluters to pay for their carbon pollution and will launch in 2023.
Make them pay. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find us, follow us, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, South Carolina in the news. Not for a good reason. Not that they're ever in the news for a good reason, but today the House there in South Carolina voted to add firing squad to the state's execution method. Evidently, they claim there's a lack of lethal drugs that they can use to kill people. So now, if they don't have the needle, you can choose. They're gonna let you choose. Do you want to be shot, or do you want to be electrocuted? And I'm surprised they didn't bring back hang, drawn, and quartered, or some other thing that we could, just. I'm not going there. Not going to do it. I'm going to stop right there. But yeah, evidently we're now going to start shooting people again, or we're going to start shooting people more. Evidently, South Carolina last executed a death row inmate 10 years ago tomorrow. It's the drugs, man. It's the drugs. Here to share some thoughts on, well, do you want to go by firing squad? I've asked our good friend, former Ohio Congressman Bob Ney, to come talk with us. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thank you, Rick.
So would you choose firing squad?
No, I mean, well, of course, if you give me option of electrocution or firing squad, then I'd have to take electrocution, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I want to be.
I wonder if they miss.
Exactly. You know? What if they hit all non-vital organs? You got shot
right. I mean,
12
I thought
times.
about that.
Although there's a chance you might survive.
Mm-hmm.
If you get shot 12 times and you survive, do you get to go free?
I assume you do. I assume.
Well, I guess
they'd have to make that deal with you. It brings a point about just the tiny history here. We had a vote in Ohio years ago to allow different types of execution, and one of the reasons that people defeated it was because if you make that kind of change, at least in Ohio at the time, you then put in jeopardy the actual death penalty itself to be reheard constitutionally.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so I was shocked at this story because if you introduce because it passed in the House and Senate there. If you introduce, and this is just a history from Ohio, which has to be about the same legally to challenge in South Carolina. If you introduce a new method, it then allows for the death penalty itself to be instituted as a debate before the Supreme Court of your state.
Yeah, to be relitigated. Interesting.
Right? Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting to see if that happens. As long as they're giving out choices, if I get to choose, can I just live a long life on a deserted island?
Right.
How about that? Or dropped out of a plane? I think I might go drop it out of a plane.
Right. Well, of course, you haven't had prison food either. I'm speaking from personal experience.
Yeah. No,
you might want to be executed.
I actually have had it once.
Oh, okay.
When I was in college, we went to Moundsville Penitentiary.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a field trip.
That's 8 miles from where I lived.
Yeah. We went there for one day.
Okay.
There was a skirmish. Something went on. They ushered us out, but we did get to eat the bad food, and I still remember it. It's still there in the back of my head.
There you go.
Let's move on. Some good news. The Biden administration says they're supportive of lifting the patent protections to get vaccines around the world. Thoughts?
Right. This is, of course, it has a lot of praise that's going to be heaped upon it because it's going to definitely help. No question about it. Now, also, obviously, there's going to be a big dispute from the drug manufacturers, which I don't think most people will care about. But he's going to waive the vaccine patents, and it's going to be done for the purposes of speed. It's necessary if you want to, get with the program, save lives. If we want to, they've also mentioned in one of the articles about restoring our position on the global stage, which I kind of argue that we're not going to particularly beat China or Russia. They've been ahead of us in providing support to other countries, but it's the right thing to do this, no matter whether it puts us up in the global stage number one or it doesn't. It's still the right thing to do. Everybody's in this boat together.
Yeah, ultimately, though, isn't it going to help us in the long run anyhow? The quicker we get rid of it, the quicker we get it under control, maybe the quicker we get to go back to some bit of sanity?
Oh, absolutely. It's going to help. It's just that when some of the media articles touted it that, it's going to make us, number one in diplomacy, no, usually we don't get credit for things, So I think if people are looking at that aspect that we need to do this because it makes us number one, that's not the reason to do it. The reason to do it is because it's going to help us, it's going to help the world, it's going to help everybody when it comes to this pandemic.
I see it the other way. Not that it's going to make us number one. It's not going to make us look like a-holes.
Well, true. Well, it's true.
One of the things, you're not sharing, you're greedy, you're America.
Right. I just think that, people have touted this, that, it's going to put us ahead of Russia and China, and it's not, but that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah. Did you see the 60 Minutes bit over the weekend with Lloyd Blinken and the chips commentary that they had going on about the fact that we don't make anything anymore?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, they had Intel, the guy from the CEO of Intel on, and he's talking about how we used to make a lot of computer chips here, a lot of the semiconductor stuff, almost 40% of the world's chips we used to make. Now we're down under 12%. And the reason that the auto industry is freaking out is they can't get the chips that they need. And the reason a lot of industries are freaking out is because Asia is where all of this stuff now is produced. Because guess what? Because of our idiotic trade deals and greedy CEOs, we've given away all of our manufacturing base. And guess what? We're now dependent on that part of the world for a couple of things like personal protective gear, basically all of our manufactured goods. And then you had Blinken come out and say, China's being more repressive at home and much more bellicose, and I forget the exact word that he used, but much more outwardly bellicose to the rest of us. And yeah, they're feeling their oats.
I didn't see it, but it's what we've been saying way back since 1995, and after that, it's slowly going to get us, and it did. In fact, it wasn't even as slow as we thought it was. It was rapidly, and I think the pandemic brought to mind that the supply chain is controlled, and it's not controlled by us.
Yep.
And if you look at when we sounded the warning alarm, and I say we because I was part of a coalition of, we can throw the names out there: Dennis Kucinich, Bernie Sanders, Steve LaTourette of Ohio. I mean, I could go down a list of about 80 people that constantly warned about this in the mid-'90s, and then, of course, permanent trade status came. I call it the unholy Gingrich-Clinton deal, and that was it. China got what it wanted, and from that point accelerated everything forward. And then, of course, a lot of people said, well, they're cheaper products. Well, they were cheaper products till they put us out of business. Then they raised the prices on us. It's exactly how it works. And so I didn't see the show, but obviously I'm pretty sympathetic to the fact that, we've got to take back the manufacturing base. And I think the pandemic proves it more than we've seen it in years.
Yeah, and this is where, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken was there on 60 Minutes, and he said China's acting more repressively at home and more aggressively abroad were his exact words. And he was pointing out, look, you've got the warships patrolling the South China Sea. You've got jets flying over the Pacific Ocean. You've got, all this stuff going on that they're flexing their muscle because we're a little bit weakened. And my position has been, on this infrastructure plan, that we don't seem to do anything in this country unless national security or defense is part of the picture. So it's my view that I think the administration should be touting this as a national defense bill more than an infrastructure bill, because we need broadband access badly. We need to be the leader in 5G, and right now we are not. We need to rebuild our infrastructure, our power grids, our waterways, all of that stuff that's computerized and being hacked constantly. This, to me, is a national security bill more than it's anything else, and we shouldn't have to beg for it and beg Joe Manchin and some Republicans to give us half of what we need. We should take it from the defense budget.
Right. I mean, it is a defensive part. I mean, it's very important to our defense as a country. It's just like what they call it, the dirty earth materials. And there were companies out there being put together, some even run as nonprofits, that were begging the government a few years ago for help, and they went away. And this is the material that's used in everything we have, washers and dryers and cell phones, etc. And, of course, who has really made that industry go forward? China.
Yep. And, it's one of these things, where people, they just made, they did better. No, we gave it away. We had greedy CEOs who only cared about lining their pockets and that of the investor class, and the wealth class did this to this country. And I don't know why people aren't screaming that on every street corner. Every one of these CEOs made this decision, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce was the conduit, the pipeline to move jobs from this country to that country. We gave away the most powerful, most productive manufacturing base in the history of civilization so that they could get a little bit richer.
Well, it's true, and it used to make me sick to my stomach. So I used to reel back hard at them publicly in press conferences we would do when I would hear this, we've got to be more productive. Okay, you take an American worker and you put he or she against a Chinese worker who's making 15 cents an hour, works 28 days a month. We can't. That's slave labor. We can't be more, quote, productive. I mean, we did quite well, again, going against slave labor.
Yep.
So it wasn't a level playing field. And, they would say that all the time, the CEOs. And then Lucent Technologies is the one that stands out best in my mind. They came into my office, and I remember the guy that represented them, and he said, Bob, just think if every Chinese buys one of our phones, and just think how many people be employed in America. Well, he wasn't employed soon after the permanent trade status, because guess what? Lucent dropped everything.
No. Look, you brought up Lucent Technologies. I remember a guy I used to see every morning He had the world by the short hairs. He worked for Lucent, had the big Cadillac, the big giant boat. Was telling me how much money he had in his 401k. He had the world by the short hairs. And then I didn't see him for a while. And then like 6-8 months later, I run into him at a diner. He's all disheveled. He's a broken man because they basically stripped it all from him.
Sure.
And just like that. And it was tragic and, but almost kind of like poetic justice because this was a guy who, he was touting that same kind of line. When we start making all that stuff, it's going to be great. And I hear the same thing about the auto industry. I talked yesterday about, the UAW wants the electric vehicles to be made here in the U.S. And someone said, well, China's going to buy a lot of electrical vehicles too. I go, yeah, I'm not against them producing domestic production for domestic consumption. But the idea that they're going to produce and ship here is not good for us.
Right. The logic on this was mind-boggling.
Yep.
I remember Congressman David Dreyer of California, he would come to me and he would say, but don't you know, Bob, Boeing really needs this trade bill because Boeing's hurting. And then there would be a trade bill, and then Boeing hurt, and then there'd be a trade bill, and Boeing hurt. And I said, didn't you realize, David, one day you'll realize in your mind, this is what's killing our companies.
Yep.
They don't need another trade bill. It's killing them.
No, I hope we don't get another horrible one. Just nuts. Lastly, I got to get your thought on the Liz Cheney McCarthy thing. This is kind of remarkable. I mean, this is like soap opera TV right in front of us. You've got the party that seems, your former party that seems to be insane on one side, and I never thought I was going to say it, but there could be a Cheney that saves our democracy.
Well, this is a very fascinating public political battle that hasn't occurred in House leadership in a long, long time. In one hand, I can understand if Cheney or any other member, now she happens to be a Cheney, but if any other member is not within their party's, loyalty test, quote, and they want to be in leadership, okay, I can understand where that causes a problem. This isn't that standard thought. Because I can see where either party would say, well, wait a minute, you can be a regular member and speak out, but if you want to just go against the leadership all the time, then, we can't have that. In normal context, I think anybody could agree, fine. That's not a good scenario. This is a little bit different context because she's going, out after Trump, and she's bringing up issues now that's not just her opinion, but it's substantive issues, for example, how they're going to proceed on looking at January the 6th. McCarthy, the minority leader, as you know, Rick, he wants to go into other things that have happened around the country. Well, this commission looks at January the 6th. January the 6th didn't happen in the Pennsylvania or Ohio state capitals. It happened in the U.S. Capitol. And so that's where her opinion then all of a sudden, quote, became, juxtaposed to the Republican side. And I'm not sure that's really true. I think she's trying to save them from themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems that, the idea that you're not going to, and she's not going to come on board with that the election was stolen and it was rigged, and the nonsense that's going on in Arizona is just mind blowing. I guess they're looking for bamboo in the ballots now. I guess that's something they're testing for. I've read. It's crazy.
Now, I did think it was a pretty smart move, though, when they brought in the New York rep, because bringing her in is very, very fascinating, and that's Elise Stefanik, because she's got an interesting history where she went against the Republicans on several major things, yet, of course, she defended Trump. But it's still interesting that they picked one of the more liberal Republican members, and that's so they can say, well, wait a minute, we're not against people who have opposed us. We're just against Liz Cheney. And that's the purpose of putting Stefanik in there.
And that explains why, in Cheney's op-ed, she had to get her, she had to go through why she's, this ultra-conservative and she believes in their values and tried to lay that out. And also took shots at Biden and, how bad the Democrats were. That explains a lot of the op-ed then.
Right. And she's trying to, of course, hold on to some things. Stefanik is playing on the fact that, she is a liberal Republican, but she was, quote, supportive of Trump in the end when it came to the impeachment. So it's just it's a move versus them replacing Cheney with somebody who is to the right of Cheney.
Yeah, does she go?
Yes. She will not survive. She survived last time because she had McCarthy, the minority leader, on her side. But now she has McCarthy and Scalise, who's one of the four leaders, the big four as they call them. She's going to go. She will not survive this. It doesn't matter that her name is Cheney. It doesn't matter what repercussion this will have in effect. She will not survive this one.
That's it. The dad's coming out with the shotgun.
That's it. Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, just don't go hunting with him. Right.
Someone's getting shot in the face again.
I forgot about that.
So does this, because I have people saying that this is going to, when they oust her, this is going to give her credibility. This is going to rise her profile. How do you see this playing out? Does it raise her profile, or does she get hammered at home in Wyoming?
Yeah, she gets hammered at home, I think, in Wyoming, because one thing you have to watch is once you lose a power base, she has to make, she could survive. She has to make sure she's extremely effective back home, touching base, make sure that she tries to do things that are, effective for her state. Otherwise, it'll be just, she's lost power, she can't help us, and somebody will challenge her that, she's not doing anything for her home state. She let personal politics get in the way of it, blah, 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 and then they'll run on that basis. I don't see where this will enhance her, although she is in a unique situation because of her last name.
Yeah. And her only supporter seems to be Mitt Romney.
Right. Well, yes, that's it.
We'll see how this plays out. But as always, Bob, I appreciate the time and the thoughts. As always, good stuff.
Thank you, Rick.
Good stuff. Our good friend Bob Ney. Going to be interesting to see how this soap opera plays itself out. We need something, right? You don't have the former guy to kick around anymore, and the Biden administration's been boring. No scandals. The picture with the Carters, that was a little scandalous. How big they looked using that wide-angle lens. How dare they? And then today, the tacos. Scandal. It's crazy. It is what it is. Speaking of scandal, we will be taking the next 2 days off. I am going for my second Moderna shot. I'm told, hoping people are wrong. I'm told not going to be feeling well for a little while. Probably best just take a little time, rest, relax, doing it for the good of the country, taking one for the team. So going to go get the second Moderna shot. Not that it matters, but I'm told the Moderna one. That's the one that gives you the sniffles, the fever, the chills, the shakes, whatever else comes with it. And then after a little time, you're better. And then I'll be vaccinated and I'll be happy because then we'll get somewhere near to sane. One of the good things that of getting the Moderna is experts are saying that this one's a little better, a little more protective for the variants. So, hey, for once, maybe I've chosen the right one. Normally when there's a choice, I always make the wrong one. Yes, I bought a beta machine over a VHS. So that's been my luck. Finally, maybe the sun will come up tomorrow, and I will have made the best choice. I just want to make sure everyone knows the next 2 days we will be away, and recovering from the big shot. Back on my birthday, so everyone can wish me happy birthday on Monday, the 10th. And all of that. Send hate emails. I do enjoy that. Please do. Finally tonight, a federal judge has ruled that the Center for Disease Control and Prevention did overstep their bounds, overstep their legal authority when they issued the national eviction moratorium. Personally, I have no idea why the CDC is involved in this. This should have been done by Congress. This should have happened all along. But evidently they've gone to court. The federal judge, Dabney Friedrich, he has a 20-page order that basically says the question before the court is very narrow. Does the Public Health Service Act grant the CDC the legal authority to impose a nationwide eviction moratorium? He says it does not. Now, this case brought by the Koch brothers Pacific Legal Foundation, the moneyed interests out there pushing this because, hey, we need people maskless and kicked out of their homes. According to the census, 1 out of 7 renters are behind on payments. This could be, just catastrophic for families. I'm hoping the Biden administration and I'm hoping Democrats get their heads in the right direction, and we help the people who need the housing and also the people who are renting to them. I mean, it's unfair that the landlords aren't being paid, but we can't just be kicking people out of their homes because this happened. We need to make it through. And I think there should be a way to help the landlords make their payments without making a huge profit so that they can make it through this and everybody gets through. But that's the rub, isn't it? Our investor class, they need their profit. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.